Welcome back to another episode of our podcast. This is
Specialty.Rate.
Specialty.Run. Um, again, I'm Batman, and I'm joined by my illustrious guest host, Robin.
That's right.
And today, we're
Unfortunately,
gonna.
I don't have my booty shorts on today. That's an inside joke.
um, just for those that have never joined us, I am Derek Wilkie. This is Rob Anderson, and we're co-hosts of this podcast that we threw together. It's a run industry podcast that we hope to shed light on the technology that's going to inevitably become our everyday lifestyle. Anyway, so
Yep.
today's episode is actually something that's going to be really cool. I think we kind of threw this together last minute. The episode was going to be about something different, but oddly enough, we got enough response, like communication between our retailers, that it was just a very big no-brainer that today's episode needed to happen. And we're going to be talking about some interesting things today. Rob, did you kind of want to like tee us off on maybe what the first topic that we're going to talk about today?
Sure. So we were gonna cover the new rules of tic tac toe and their impact on run specialty. No, I'm just kidding. Um, the other subject we'll put off for a couple of days, but it was holiday related, and today's subject is near and dear to my heart, of course, but it's also near and dear to the hearts of anyone who's ever tried to fall asleep to anything playing on YouTube, and that is kind of SEO and where search engine optimization and the role of the internet falls in run specialty. We've had a lot of questions recently about, best practices. What do I do now? What do I do to improve things? And I think there is a lot of confusion out there in our world about the role of the internet in run specialty, both good and bad. And so hopefully we can clear that up and provide a little bit of color commentary around best practices that we've seen as you know a service provider to most of the industry. What we've seen the best performers do, and what we've seen some of the lower performers do from a mistakes perspective, and what we ourselves have done from a mistakes perspective as
Right.
well. I think, Derek, I think probably the first thing that we should do is cover, you know, what do we think well, first of all, the dog is barking in the background, so I'm going to get up and close the window in just a second. But the question really is, what do we think the no nonsense starter pack, what do you really need as far as internet presence is concerned, goes? There's so much out there. People have so many different options, and everybody's always trying to sell them something. Um,
Yep.
uh, you know, what makes sense for people to have? If you'll start on that while I close this window so the dog doesn't bark at us the whole time, that would be magical. I'll be right back.
100%. Yeah. So I think that like off the top, like you're going to have your easy stuff. Your Google business profile, I think, is imperative. We talk about your website and e-commerce, what that should look like, and then I think it kind of like goes down into like socials. Anything from like Instagram. I mean, I think we've talked about Strava and locally a lot lately, YouTube, TikTok, that type of stuff, and then also local stuff. So like we could probably dive into in a little more detail into some of that stuff, but I think that's kind of a good that's a good starting picture of I think the most important ones.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if you want to go brass tacks, um, as it stands today, and probably for a little bit longer, Google's still the king of search.
Yep.
Um, I'm going to go out on a limb and say not that much longer. About a year ago, I said that by the end of 2024, maybe it was 2025, that Google would be dead and that AI like ChatGPT will have taken its place in search. I was a little premature on that, but I still stand behind that. I do think Google's heyday is behind us, and I do think that AI like ChatGPT will eventually replace search engines as we know them.
Oh yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in a world where Google still exists and continues to exist, Google Business Profile is at the very top of that list. Um, the next thing is your website, and website includes e-commerce. Even though those two things can technically be separate things, you have to have an e-commerce presence in 2025, not only from an SEO perspective, but just from a customer experience perspective. Um,
Right.
those are the two real key, absolute must-haves. On the next tier of stuff that you really should have comes Instagram, Strava, and locally. Um, and you can probably put Facebook in there. And I'm doing the probably and waving my hand around. How long is it going to be before my camera accidentally zooms in like super far in on my face by accident? I need to put my hands down. Um, the reason that we used Instagram as opposed to the others is that Instagram in Run Specialty is used far more than Facebook is by the shopping public, and is far more of of a successful advertising tool for retailers than Facebook. In broad strokes, everybody's different. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's got a Facebook page that absolutely slugs it. But if you want to group Instagram and Facebook together, we can call it that. Um, but you know, Instagram/Facebook, Strava, as far as Strava organization or group, whatever they call it nowadays, and locally, because a lot of the brands like Brooks, for example, when they say, hey, does somebody near you carry this, at least for the time being, they're referencing locally. So it's a good idea to have a presence on locally too. Um, the next tier of stuff is the YouTubes and the TikToks of the world. And this gets into content creation, and this gets into the nice to have zone. If you have the bandwidth, the spend, the desire, talent, you name it, to produce enough content to fill up and or keep engaged somebody on YouTube, somebody, an audience on YouTube or an audience on TikTok, more power to you, because that is the new frontier of engagement when it comes to brands, building brand equity and loyalty and so on. But it's a lot to ask a business owner to go and create a YouTube channel or a TikTok account and then start creating constant content for those things. It's too much to ask. It's going to be very difficult and overwhelming. So we put it in the nice to have category, and we could dig deeper in that a little bit later. What are your thoughts on our tier list, and especially in the YouTube TikTok realm?
Um, well, it's funny because as you asked that, I felt like my brain split that into two separate questions. So, like, what were you thinking when you asked the portion specifically around YouTube, TikTok? Just to
Well,
elaborate the question.
because I'm so torn in saying that it's a nice to have, because I know it's such a powerful tool, but I also know that when it comes to time investment and return on investment, that retailers are so much better off spending time uh, telegraphing their brand and message in content on their website to begin with
Hmm.
than they are on YouTube or TikTok. That
Yeah.
we don't want to spread them too thin with our suggestions, if that makes sense. At least that's where my
Right.
thinking is.
No, I get that. Um, if you give me a moment, I kind of want to unpack that though, because I think that's valuable.
Yeah,
Because so I follow a guy. I have been following a guy for a long time. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk. I think that from a marketing perspective, he's a genius.
Gary
And one of
V.
the things that Gary V. And one of the things that he's constantly promoting, which I wholeheartedly agree with is that you kind of want to dig deep into the ones that have minimal cost of entry. And when it
Fair.
comes to your organic reach and minimal cost of entry, YouTube is incredibly cheap. Like it's free. Like you don't have to do cost. It doesn't cost anything to post a video. And I'm gonna throw out a little kind of like a shout out because one of the best ways I've seen it utilized. I love watching Naperville Running's their shoe reviews. I see tons of retailers that are doing that where they're just telling their customers about shoes they're already gonna carry. And I can't tell you, as a 350, well, I'm 330 now. I've been bringing my weight down on purpose.
Good for you.
But at one point, I was 380 pounds about a year ago, and I couldn't find a shoe to save my life that was like able to stand up to the impact that a 380-pound person puts on a shoe when they run. And had it not been for some of those YouTube reviews, I'm not sure I would have found my way into the right. That's why I'm obsessed with the Keanu. That's the technology in the Keanu is just insane. But I found it. I found it through one of the reviews. You know what I mean? So it's just like it really those while they don't seem to hold tremendous impact, you'd be surprised the little things that hold tremendous impact when we're and especially when we're talking about like I think me and you talked a little bit about ROI and what is truly ROI, but that to me is ROI. If I can post something that can organically reach 100 people and it didn't cost me anything except maybe 15, 20 minutes of my time to talk about a shoe I'm already an expert in anyway, I think there's value in that. Now, is it
Yeah, you're absolutely
necessary?
right.
I don't think it's necessary, but I think it's a powerful addition.
You're absolutely right, and so now I know that I can blame Chris and Kyle and those guys for the Keanu um, uh, obsession. And speaking of YouTube channels, a couple of other good ones just off the top of my head. Blue Ox has a really great YouTube channel. Adam's a great guy, and Steve from Run More, he's got some really great reviews on ultra shoes. So if you guys are bouncing around and peeping the scene, all of those channels are wonderful. Fitness sports out in Iowa as well. But there's so many that it'll take us all day
Yeah.
to name them. You know, to your point, it's free to do and it is priceless. So I think I'm going to asterisk my original comment and say that that would be step two. Not nice to have, but once you've established sort of the baseline, Google business profile, website slash e-commerce, Instagram, Strava locally, presence. Step two is the content and storytelling of the YouTube, TikTok world, because you're right. I mean, that's how people get to know a brand or
Yeah.
a person online when they're not there in person.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's the AI thing, right? So this is another question that we've gotten, especially after we featured Kingston on the last episode. How's all this going to change with AI?
Right.
I've done some excruciatingly long SEO tutorials and classes on the Run Free Projects YouTube page. Look, listen to me. I sound like I'm 75 freaking years old. Oh man, let's pretend I didn't say that. YouTube channel. Good lord.
I'm never letting
It's
you live
Friday.
that down.
Yeah, it's Friday. Give me a freaking break. Um, and I stand by this, and that is, the way that you future proof your SEO is by making it interesting and relevant to an actual human being. There's no
Yes.
there's no gaming any system. And in modern times there really is no gaming any system with good SEO anyway. All of that went away right around 2020.
Yeah.
And with AI, same thing stands. ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, Claude, whatever you want to use, chatbot style AIs, they're replacing search engines for a lot of people, they've already replaced search engines ever since ChatGPT 4.1. Um, you know, search is pretty good with those systems.
Yeah.
And pretty accurate. And they have MCP, which is a reference protocol for data for AI systems, so that they don't have to go out and surf the web like a regular human being does in the future, which means that they'll be able to access info quickly. There's also a protocol whose name I can't remember, but it's a something, where you know you'll be able to shop directly through your favorite AI chatbot with your favorite retailers. And we're doing some testing with that. I know other e-commerce platforms are doing some testing with that, but within 12 months that's going to be standard. So you say, hey Kingston, grab me 3 pair of OS First socks from Charlotte Running Company and have them sent to the roof of my house in 20 minutes via jet-powered hypermagnetic drone. And I don't know if the last part is going to happen, but the first part certainly will. It'd be dope if the last part happened, but yeah.
Well, I think that's a piece that we don't want our viewers to miss, because that portion is going to be real. Like the
You did it.
I did it first.
So for those out of the loop, we
yeah.
both have these cameras that have these hand gestures that you can't turn off. And if you do a specific hand gesture, it'll zoom in. If we've been on like demos or calls together, you've seen me do it. I'll like scratch my face, or I'll start waving my hands around because I'm excited. And next thing you know, we're zoomed in on my eye, like all the way, full screen eyeball, and I can't figure out how to zoom back out. And I thought it was going to be me. Notice that I'm like intentionally keeping my hands low, and Derek is a master with this thing. Like earlier we were trying to get him centered in the frame, and he was like doing the hand gestures to move the camera properly, and I'm sitting here blown away. It looked like Neo from the Matrix, dodging all the bullets, and he just did it. Oh, that's great. That makes
I'm
up for my
mortified because I
YouTube
can't believe
page
I'm the
comment.
one that did it. Like, so I apologize for the close up, but I guess it was my time.
That's okay. Sorry.
But
Sorry.
I think that this is a very powerful thing that we're talking about, because this is going to be something that's super, super real. In fact, like this is a very unique, the next like 12 to 18 months is going to be a very unique opportunity, because we're talking about organic ability the same way that it was when Facebook was brand new, when Instagram was brand new. So the retailers that get themselves into these AI platforms so that they're able to be found,
Mm-hmm.
that's huge, because if there's nobody else there and someone goes and says, "Hey, where can I, find me the closest place to buy a pair of Brooks Ghost 20,000, whatever the newest one is."
Yep.
If you're a retailer that's searchable by that particular platform, you're going to be the only one. It's like Google page one on steroids, because if you're the one of 3 that are available, you're going to be found essentially on that page one, that hypothetical page one or whatever. And I mean, it just, that type of organic, I think, hasn't existed in a long time, 10, 12 years, 15 years at least. So
Totally.
it's going to be a very big opportunity to like, and I think that's the reason why that's a whole completely different episode in its own right, because there'll be a lot to unpack there. But I didn't want our viewers to miss that piece. I'm gonna zoom in again.
You were about to. I
got,
saw it.
I
I was
gotta
excited to
stop
see it
toddling my
happen.
hands. But I'm excited about this, because it's like this is going to be a game changer when it eventually becomes like more of a reality. It's starting now, obviously, and it's
Yep.
slow, but as it avalanches, it's going to be, I think, a big opportunity for a lot of retailers.
Yep. And you see, when you look at studies and you have conversations with Gen Z and some of the younger millennials and even elder millennials, and obviously this is not just generations. This is, again, sweeping generalizations just for the purposes of our conversation here. They do somewhere between 40 and 60% of the background research that they require to find a sense of comfort with whatever buying decision they plan to make before setting foot in a store to make the ultimate buying decision, right? So they want to be informed to some degree before they set foot in a store. And this is
Right.
whether this is shoes or whatever else, that tends to be how it goes. And I think, especially with the way we interact with I think the learning part, whether that is comparing products to one another or whether that is what exactly does stability mean when somebody says that it's got a, 3 millimeter rise or whatever. What are you talking about? What's pronating? And, what should I look out for when, dot, dot, dot? Like all these questions that, you know, were either really hard to have answered or that you didn't think of, or very easy to answer at your fingertips. And your AI is going to go and they're going to go find products and or they're going to go find the answers to those questions, and they're going to prefer something that's local to you, knowing that you're going somewhere physically in person. And if you as a retailer have the answers to or have enough background information about how to become a trustworthy advisor in the shoe buying process, then you'll be the one who's referenced in those answers. And those 2 hour 7 hour long SEO classes on the Run Free YouTube channel still stand, because at the end of the day you're creating content that actually matters to people and you're not trying to cheat the system. Yeah, very exciting stuff. I really do. AI will be the rebirth of search, and especially Google is not helping itself either. I mean, some of the things that have happened with Google search in the past 12 months are pretty brutal and abysmal. If anyone paying attention to how they're ranking over time, and especially if they're doing any kind of competition from an information availability perspective towards like Reddit, for example, after some of the changes were made, you sort of disappeared off the face of the earth. So Google's making it very easy for the AI community to come in and take over with a vengeance. So the next question is, we have an idea of what the basics are, right? We know you need a Google business profile and you need a website and e-commerce, Instagram, a Strava group page, and I think it is actually called a page, locally presence, secondarily YouTube, TikTok, etc. An understanding of the picture with AI. Where do the Run Specialty retailer, belong in all of this? Like, what is online to Run Specialty? And honestly, I think this is probably where the biggest misunderstanding about this entire subject really is. And I think some of this is hard to hear, but I think some of this is also very freeing if it's heard with an open mind and open ears. When, as a retailer, when you're standing in your store and you're looking around, you're looking at a store full of products. And so when you think about maintaining your store, you're thinking about maintaining the presentation of those products. Excuse me, because you're already inside your store. It is natural, because your website, and I'll use the website because it's the easiest conceptual extension, right? It's natural when you think about your website to think about your website as an extension of your store, and to think about essentially managing and presenting products as the sum total purpose of your online presence, or at least the goal of a good online presence is having a giant library of products that's accessible, and that is, a large secondary income source that is just absolutely crushing it, Amazon 2.0. And a lot of money, time, and effort goes into advertising product and thinking about product and that's a mistake in my opinion.
I agree. I agree
In
100%.
and that's hard to hear. It's also confusing to hear because online, your website and even your e-commerce store isn't being inside of a store. You're still way out on the parkway somewhere on the street, you know, zoomed way out looking at the city, whatever analogy you want to use. And you have to think, we have to think together strategically, you know, what is Run Specialty? What are you to your shoppers in your community? Are you the cheapest place to find shoes? Probably not. Um, do you want to be the cheapest place to find shoes? Probably not. When you think about what you want the people who love coming in and dealing with you to think about, what are the things that you want them to have at top of mind? The white glove treatment, the fitting process. Anybody who has never gone through a fitting process at a Run Specialty store is missing out. It's one of the things I always tell folks, like, man, if you've never gone to a running store and had a good solid fitting process, go in there and get it done. It is amazing the things you discover. It's such a great experience. The community, your events, your expertise, curation. Just the idea that there are millions upon millions of different products for someone like me or Derek or anyone else to choose from who may or may not have any idea what the advantages or disadvantages of any given product are over one or the other, to reduce choice and provide a curated subset of all of those options signed off on by you and your expert staff, that there's a value to that. And the expert conversation, the fitting process, and the guided tour of addressing needs that ultimately lead to a purchase is likely where you think about the people who value you the most, thinking about where they value you the most. Did I miss anything big sticking out there, Derek? I mean, I know it feels very fluffy, but we'll dig into it a little bit more so it doesn't feel so fluffy, because I know that can sound like a cop-out using all those words, but...
Right. No, I don't think we missed anything. I think there's some things to unpack there, but I don't think we missed anything.
So when so you go, okay, well, how the hell am I supposed to sell that? What am I supposed to do with that? And we're going to dig into that. A couple of other things to think about in that realm are, when we think about online and the purpose of online, let's also think about who you're competing with and what you're competing with and why. Because I think that's really important. And again, these are all sweeping generalizations because that's the only way we can talk about this stuff with this specific situation. But hopefully this gives you a framework to think about things with a strategy that might be a little bit different based on from a bunch of internet guys. So are you competing with Hoka's D2C business or Brooks's D2C business or Ultra's D2C business? On some frustrating Saturday afternoons when you have somebody asking for a specific colorway that you've never heard of before, but then realize it's available on the B2B, maybe you feel like, yes, the answer is yes. But in reality, you're not competing with their D2C business. That's a commodity business. If someone is shopping online and they go to Altra's website and they order a specific shoe in a specific colorway, in a specific size, width, etc., they know what they want. They're not looking for any kind of value add. They're looking for a specific commodity product with no bells, whistles, or anything else, and they probably are trying to find the cheapest, fastest path to get to that product. And there's not a whole lot that you can do to influence that decision. And if you talk to any of the brands, they'll mirror that same sentiment. Their D2C business is not designed to compete with Run Specialty stores.
Yep.
Run Specialty stores are designed to be the trusted advisor, the place that if someone needs to understand what they need and they don't know, they go there first. That's the entry point. If you had the pleasure of listening to the talk that Mackenzie Rink gave at the Specialty.Run Congress the first year they put that on, which I believe was 2023, could have been 2022. She worked with the Man Group out of Asheville. She has a great TikTok account, and I don't recall the name. We'll put it in the show notes below. Sorry about that, Mackenzie. But she did a really, really stellar presentation about how Gen Z and certain types of runners expect to interact with run specialty retailers in the modern age, and how much of that interaction happens online, and how much of the personalization of that interaction and the community aspect of that interaction has nothing to do with products whatsoever, and how products are kind of like an afterthought of the continued relationship that's developed through run clubs, through races on the weekends, through, interactions online, Discord servers, whatever it is. And it is that community, the fitting process, the trusted advisory. It is those intangibles that are really the selling point, or supposed to be the selling point, the real value add, the things that you love about your running store that are what you're selling. And the question, go ahead, Derek.
I was just looking at my notes. Is that what you were referring to when you called it frictionless brand amplification?
That's right. So when you think about what is the purpose of online, how do you then tell the world, here's what I am as a retailer that is not just a guy that sells shoes that you can buy from brooksrunning.com. That is, my weight loss story and why I opened this running store, or our support of the cystic fibrosis community in this town, or our community and all the different races, runs, and other activities that we've done together. The 3 couples who have gotten married and had children through our Wednesday night pub runs, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, especially the Gen Z and the younger millennial side, they're shopping for community as much or more than they're shopping for products. And of course, when you've established a relationship with someone where they see your community, your value adds like that, whether it's fitting process or anything else, as being valuable, they are going to default to you for every purchase that they make in the space, no matter what, unless there's absolutely no way that you can fulfill their need. I have probably worn this reference out a million times. Derek knows exactly what I'm going to say. but I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. My son is a high school cross country and track runner. I don't know where he gets it from because I am not a very fast runner, but he is. And he started running in the seventh grade. He's now in the 11th grade. And the very first time, like when he joined the track team, he went to Charlotte Running Company in Dilworth, uh, and went through the fitting process with a guy named Armani. And Armani was super duper cool, very patient with him. Will, my kid, had lots of questions, answered all of his questions, put him on the treadmill and all that kind of stuff, and ended up putting him in a pair of shoes. And you know, as we were leaving the store, I spent an hour plus with him, getting him dialed in. And as we were leaving the store, Will's on Strava looking him up and finds him, and apparently, this guy Armani is a stud and can run like the freaking wind. And so he finds him on Strava, starts following him, and fast forward 4.5 years later, every single running purchase that Will makes happens at Charlotte Running Company in person. His dad owns an e-commerce company, by the way. Happens in person at Charlotte Running Company, in or around the orbit of Armani, informed by Armani or one of his trusted friends / co-workers, specifically because of that interaction and how careful he was handled in that space. And this is a 16-year-old. That kind of brand loyalty is invaluable. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars, and too many pairs of shoes given the number of miles that he's put on some of them. I think I have 2 pair of Mount to Coasts that have no miles on them, and I'm not really sure why or how he convinced my mom that he needed another pair. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But nonetheless, his relationship that he established with Armani and Charlotte Running Company is a perfect example of exactly what Run Specialty is all about. And online is where the conversation about, hey, this is what we have to offer starts. Because whether you like it or not, everybody begins their buying journey online. I think, and if you've sat down with me for more than 5 minutes, 97% of, this is according to Google, 97% of people do a local search on Google, running shoes near me, or help for shin splints near me, whatever it is, something near me. And you get the picture of the map, and it's got the little pins, and each of the pins leads to a Google business profile. And each of those business profiles leads to Google reviews, usually some pictures, maybe a couple of products, and the website. And that process right there is how most people find businesses that they've never heard of, and particularly local businesses. If you sell nothing through e-commerce, being available to have a response to whatever it is that somebody needs near me, such that they can click through, land on your website, and learn enough about you to be compelled and comfortable enough to come into the front door of your store and ask follow-up questions to lead them to potentially a sale, then you're doing it right.
Yep. Would you call it first impression?
Yeah. It's the most valuable piece of real estate that you own, and it is always the first impression. And the frictionless aspect comes when it is as accurate of a representation of what someone is going to see when they come into the store. Right. And this sounds sales pitchy since I work for Run Free. But I mean, I eat my own dog food. It doesn't have to be Run Free. This is just how e-commerce, a web presence, online generally, and moving from that space to the physical space really should work. And that is,
Yeah.
we know everybody starts their journey online. When they make the move to the physical world to finish that journey, it should feel like it's the same place. It should feel like
Right.
there's no separation.
100%. Well, so let me actually take it back then, and let's take a step back. If we're talking about um, this, we've been talking about like the last 15 minutes about the importance of like the way that it feels and the way that we involve our community and how we're presenting our first impression, if you will, and that it should reflect similarly across the board. E-com towards, when they go to your website, that should translate, if you will, and be seamless. What are some of the biggest mistakes that we both see this from time like all day long? But what are some of the biggest mistakes that retailers are making that kind of like prevent that from being the case? Maybe we should talk about some of those and unpack some of those so that we can kind of like guide towards the, I guess, best practice, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple really big mistakes that get made. And again, this is just, if you don't really put a lot of thought into it, it's not intuitive that this is the case, which is why we're sitting
Right.
here having this conversation. So this isn't a judgment when I'm saying it like this. Um, one of the largest mistakes is that there is this default assumption that online presence equals e-commerce, which equals potential secondary path to income. Uh, and maybe, and I'll give you an example. A store stood up an e-commerce store at the beginning of COVID, and it kept them open and running during the first couple of months of COVID. Name your time frame. Things opened back up. The store opened up, and their sales that were happening online fell from, let's call it 40% of all sales to 4% of all sales. And they looked at that and they said, well, it was good to me during COVID, but I don't need it. 4% of all sales is negligible. Whatever, I'm not going to worry about it. They give the e-com stuff a boot, and they have kind of a super basic website, or they have a Facebook page, or just the Google business profile. And somebody goes searching for running shoes near me or whatever it is, and they stumble across bare minimum information about the business. If they stumble across bare minimum information about the business and they don't see the products, they don't see smiling faces of the people in the store, they don't see that first impression piece of real estate, they don't see effort put forth to present the brand in a way that feels active and open, they're going to wonder whether or not you're still open or not.
Right.
And they're probably going to move on. Not always. If you're close, then it's probably not a huge risk to drive over and peep the scene. But if you're not close, they're going to go and look at other business profiles that are near you that have more built out, more accurate, more up to date, probably better said, and product listings. People may not make the purchase with you the first time that they buy from you online, but they definitely want to see what they can expect when they walk in the front door. They want to look through your products. They want to look through how you suggest products to people. Missing all of that, or having something that's antiquated, or missing a website entirely, massive red flag. People move past it. As much of a mistake is a focus solely on product. So this is probably what we see the most. And it's understandable, right? This kind of goes back to the whole, if you're a business owner, if you're a running store owner, and you're standing in the middle of your store, and you need to, tidy up and make sure everything's good, you're going to start tidying up around product, because that's what's surrounding you in the store. And when you look at your website and e-commerce store and online presence, it feels like virtually you're sitting in the middle of your store. But in reality, product focus online, and of course there are always outliers, but generally speaking, and I will bet my paycheck on it. Generally speaking, focusing on polishing product as opposed to creating content to define who and what you are and how you offer expertise, community, etc. to the community does not bring you the same return on investment and is ultimately a waste of time. Unless you're fixing something that's wrong with your e-commerce site or your website, meaning like you have a legitimate identified problem with something, going in and making changes to product descriptions, and tweaking things on product pages is a waste of time. And that hurts to hear. We know a lot of folks that spend a ton of time, nitpicking things on product descriptions and that kind of thing. But I'm here to tell you that if you gave up nitpicking your product descriptions and spent all of your time writing articles about the people who work for you and what their favorite things to do in the running space are, and then every week writing a quick little blurb about their favorite new product that you got in and why it's their favorite new product, that would pay dividends 10 times over as compared to messing with product descriptions. And the reason is because messing with those product descriptions isn't going to provide you with any kind of an advantage online to begin with, and that's the least competitive part of your website because it's the most highly competitive from a keyword area. In other words, Go 17 and Clifton 9, those are commodities. Everyone who sells shoes sells those things. So if you're trying to differentiate yourself by Go 17 or Clifton 9, that is the most expensive, most difficult possible way to differentiate yourself and to try to rank of all of the possible ways to try to rank. One last comment on this, because this is super important, and this is also something that's a bit of a holdover from the old days, and that is, rewind the clock 7 years, 2018-ish time frame. If you looked at Google Analytics, and we used to call it, what was it, like Universal Analytics back then. Now it's just Google Analytics. They'll change it again in a couple of weeks. But I think they call it views now. It used to be called page views, all one word, which I never understood. Anyway, you look at page views, and then you look at clicks, and then you look at time spent on the page. And back in 2018, that was a really, really important trio of data to look at. So if I had 80 page views and I had 2 clicks and my average time spent on the page was like a tenth of a second, then that would tell me that I had a page that needed some UX work on the page, because whatever I had there was not enticing to whoever it was that was clicking there, and however I was leading them there obviously wasn't exciting, because there were 80 people that went there and clicked nothing and left. In 2025, page views are completely meaningless. That number is 100% completely meaningless and a total waste of your time, other than in pattern recognition. And the reason I say that is because so much of the internet is bots and AI scanning and tools. And so you could have 50,000 page views and 4 clicks, but 6 of the page views were humans and 4 of the 6 people did the clicking. It's not really a great way to determine whether or not you're being engaged with any longer. So be super duper careful with some of the old ways of doing things because things have changed so much. And I know that's a hot take. Actually, I've had a lot of hot takes. I'm going to get some hate here, but I'm telling you, you can waste so much time and money messing with product descriptions, trying to get SEO just right, and messing with stuff like page views and clicks and engagement when what you're really doing is chasing ghosts because all it is just
Mhm.
bots. Um, you may not know this, but there is a section reserved on lots of e-commerce platforms, including ours, but all over the place. You name the e-commerce platform, WordPress has the section, um, Squarespace, etc., um, called meta keyword. Google doesn't use that. It's completely ignored. The meta keyword tags, meta keyword meta information is 100% ignored now by search engines. Um, that's how far beyond that old school way of doing things technology has come.
Can I add a piece of
By all means, please. I know
that?
I've kind of been rambling.
No,
Imagine
you're
that.
good. This is great, and I just think that it's important to know why. And something that I heard recently that actually put a lot of this into perspective for me, and I just kind of wanted to pass that on to our viewers because the easiest way to look at this when you're just like, why is all of this? Why is it important what we're saying here? And it's because with all of the AI algorithms and all of these social media platforms, they're not social media platforms anymore. They're interest media platforms. So these algorithms will go through and these bots that Rob's talking about, they crawl, but they're not looking for social cues any longer. People sharing, people liking, people interacting with each other, looking for interest. So you have a far higher likelihood of posting this custom content with like blog posts and things like that, things that you find interesting that make your business tick, things that make that are interesting about you or your staff or a shoe or whatever the case. There are going to be people who are looking for that interest that are going to find you versus the product data of the Ghost 17, if you will, right? And so I just think when I heard that, I was like, that 100% makes sense, and it kind of put it into context for me. And I think that's a great way to look at it because in 12 months, to our point earlier, in 12 to 18 months, it's going to even be more so of an interest-based, environment than it is social.
You got it, dude. And it feels so unintuitive to start, and then you kind of dig into it and you're like, oh, I see. I get it. I understand. And luckily, I mean, it is a little harder to begin with, but it's way less boring and it's way less expensive. You will spend far less on advertising doing it the right way than you will trying to advertise a pair of shoes going up against Brooks Running. I can tell you that
Right.
much.
Yeah.
But one thing to think about: you do have secret weapons. Secret weapon number one is you have locality. So, you may be in a very big city, and in a very big city, it may be a little bit harder to compete in our niche than it would be in, um, you know, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, let's say, um, or Monroe, North Carolina, or whatever it is.
You're
But
just picking the smallest towns
yeah,
in the
yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah. But generally speaking, or 96 South Carolina, that's a real city. Um, generally speaking, that locality gives you not only a place to focus and a way to focus search engines, search engine results, and interest results, but it also gives you a foothold in content creation. So, as you and I were talking earlier, Derek, before we got on here, and what we had discussed with one of our customers who we were kind of giving this info to help them wrap their head around what the heck we were talking about. Um, if you were to create an article or a piece of content that said, you know, let's and this is just making things up, right? I'm not saying that this is the greatest idea in the world. Hopefully this just kind of informs the concept a little bit better. uh, it's a map of the local area where your shop is. It's called a 10-mile radius around your store. And it's a cool animated map like there used to be on the back of cereal boxes. You could totally get Nano Banana, which is Google Gemini, by the way, to draw you up a really cool map like that, for sure. And then you have a couple of different really kick-ass run spots, trail runs, cool greenway runs, that kind of thing, and you mark them with a flag. And then you have each of your staff members who is into running or various kinds of running or whatever it is, give their thoughts on each of those places. And then you have a profile of all the major runs that are near you, and give it its own dedicated page, have a little profile. You can link to the all trails or to Strava that has focused on that area, whatever it is. And then you can also give the staff members pics of these pieces of gear are absolute must-haves for this run. And you can have a video of them telling a story about it. You can kind of take it to the nth degree. Make sure you stop by the store and ask me about the time that I took the shop dog out to Reedy Creek and what happened to us when we got stuck in the storm. You'll be peeing your pants. It's so funny, blah, 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 blah. And so now you have so many things that are unique on the internet that are referenceable and that are enticing to any search engine, and especially AI, and also person. So you have the locality component, which is rare, and you have Run Specialty running stuff, also rare and niche. So all of a sudden, somebody in the surrounding area goes to ChatGPT and starts asking questions about, winter hiking or running, or even questions about running shoes. ChatGPT sees that you're writing articles about the local area and running, and has all these references. You have all these references to products that are specific to your area. Guess whose content ChatGPT will now feature in that entire conversation with that person? Yep. Yours. That is where you really get the impact. And instead of focusing on, polishing product descriptions, creating something like that, yes, it takes a little bit more work. Yes, it feels silly sometimes. Yes, you're writing that stuff for robots, but you're also sort of writing the reference book for the search engines, so that when somebody makes a search about something that you do, the search engine has a manual that it can look up stuff in about you. Otherwise, all it has is just product listings, and you're more than that.
Yep.
And that's such a huge deal. I know we've been kind of focused on this for a while, and I can go on forever, and I'm sorry for bogarting yet again. And we got a couple more little subjects to cover. If you do go to the Run Free Projects YouTube channel, there's a set of 3 SEO videos, and there's one follow-up about SEO and AI. If you want to get into the details, by all means. You can also steal that content and use it with any e-commerce or website platform that you want to. It doesn't have to be with Run Free. I'm not trying to sell you anything here. But I do want to take some time and talk about setting up navigation for shopping by need and not by catalog. A little bit of a hot take, but also something that we've seen demonstrated over and over and over again as a win.
Mm-hmm. For context, guys, what we're talking about is before the episode, Rob and I got together and we were kind of planning this out as far as like what's the most important information we want to share with you guys, and kind of, within this hour and 15-minute time that we get to have with you guys every few weeks, what's the most valuable content. And we spent so much time on what we just spent because we think that that's the forefront of the future, right? It's going to be very imperative that we pivot as everything else pivots, right? But I think the extra pieces that come into that, even though we just spent, 20, 30 minutes going over, really?
Haha. But now you're centered in the screen. Uh-oh, I'm going to do something with my hands that I'm going to regret.
Okay, right, don't do it. Okay, we're good. So, man, I didn't realize how much I talk with my
Yeah, I
hands.
know,
Like,
I know.
that's
I have to
crazy.
literally tell myself not to do. I'm sitting on my hands right now, so yeah.
But the importance of what we're talking about is, because I don't want to like take away from what we just spent. It's very important. But we felt it was more important to elaborate on what we just went over, and the parts that are like, it's still important what we're about to talk about, which is, stop me if I'm wrong, but we're going to get into like naming conventions and like navigation of the site, correct?
Yep.
So yeah, this portion is important too for the now because we live in the now, right? And what we just discussed is going to be more and more and more and more prevalent. But there are still aspects of your sites that do need to be, I think, presented in a way that makes it just as easy for your customers to find the products online as they find them in store. In store, it's a little bit more, intuitive. There's a visual representation, a visual aspect that you just don't get from an online platform. And then you have that fit process that Rob explained, where it's just very hands-on and white gloved, and the experience is personal. What we're going to go over now kind of elaborates on how to accomplish that on the ecom side of it, so that it's just as easy to use, it's just as clear. But while the Googles are still present and still relevant, how do we get those products to show up realistically in a way that the bots can, your customers can still technically search those things and find them. So I don't mean to cut you off, Rob. I just wanted to set that up because I think that
No, you're right.
it's just as important, but I think there's different reasons to why we're talking about
No, I appreciate it. You know me, man. I'll just ramble forever. So by all means, stop me at any moment in time and do us all a favor.
it.
Um,
Yeah. Let,
that,
us do this then. Like, how about we start talking about like naming conventions, and then separately we'll talk about the navigation.
yeah. Let's quickly jump into naming conventions because they are a bridge between what we just talked about and navigation, more generally speaking. So, and yes, I have count them 3 total drinks that I have taken a sip from so far on my desk. ADHD is
It is
real.
Deadpool.
Yeah.
Instead of a Deadpool, we get just how many drinks Rob's going to bring out.
So when you think about naming conventions, we're talking about product naming conventions and other references to proper nouns and other things like pronouns that might be associated with searches. For example, men's and women's, children's, unisex, Brooks Ghost. If you decide to abbreviate any of that stuff or spell it in a unique and interesting way, you obviously have the right to do so, but recognize that you're forfeiting your ability to show up to search engines as having that stuff in a lot of cases. So, in some cases, the search engine can close the gap. So, if I have a W Ghost 17 in, 8B, it can put together that it's a women's Ghost 17 and 8B. Oh, great! Now I'm losing my ability to speak. This is everybody's greatest wish is finally coming true right here on camera. But if you're abbreviating in really creative ways, then you may accidentally break your searchability, right? So we've seen all kinds of different abbreviations: WMNS, WMN, WN. I'm just using women just because we, have just brought it up a few minutes ago. Or if, and this sounds like it's kind of splitting hairs, but if a brand like Ultra uses the term unisex on its website to describe shoes that are intended for anyone of any sex, child, adult, or otherwise, it's probably a good idea to refer to them as unisex on your site, because searches, whether those are searches by people or whether they are like product aggregators or whatever else, are going to be looking for those specific terms and cues to validate that those are in fact products. Now, with Run Free, with a lot of other e-commerce platforms, there is a product schema that we use that is basically a framework of how the data is presented on the page and to the internet, generally speaking, so that a search engine or an indexing service knows where to look to find something like a UPC code, a SKU, categories, primary, sub, etc. So sometimes they can fill in the blanks, but generally speaking, if there's a situation where you're naming something that has a name given to it by a company, it's a good idea to retain that thing's name. Same goes for product numbers, same goes for SKUs, UPCs, and so on. The exception to this rule is if you're customizing some of their stuff. Most common thing, Sky Manufacturing. They do lots of really cool t-shirts and stuff like that for different stores. If you were to create a custom t-shirt, it's a Sky Manufacturing shirt with your logo on it, and you decided that you wanted to use Sky's UPC with an added suffix of 3 digits that indicate what kind of customization it is, I think that's completely fair and totally reasonable and legit. Or if you wanted to add a prefix or suffix to the SKU that Sky uses to classify that item to show that it is custom with a certain print of yours, also totally legit. Otherwise, always a good idea to maintain officialness of any kind of officially named thing as much as you can to maintain that referenceability in search engines and that kind of thing. When you start making up names, making up numbers, and that kind of thing, it just makes it that much harder for search engines to find.
100%.
And then navigation. And this is kind of a hot take too. And we didn't mean this to be all hot takes, but we're just talking about like the primary mistakes that we see made. And honestly, this is all stuff that I would do if somebody didn't tell me otherwise, because it's all intuitive to do it this way. But it makes sense once you sort of understand why you shouldn't. So
I've been building websites for 15 years, and it's something that I've just come across in the last, 5 years as being something that's like a real point of, worth talking about.
yeah, exactly. The other thing is navigation, and this is how you arrange your pages, product presentation. So product presentation is the easiest to describe this in, but this can be any kind of navigation of any kind on your website. But how and what you curate your products to and as is of value to your customer. What you choose to present to your customer as solutions to the various things that they come to you with, that's a value. That's something that they value about the knowledge that you have and that they trust about you being able to do. So extending that curation to your online presence, that's valuable. In other words, fighting the urge to arrange products by category like you were putting it into a point of sale system, and leaning more into arranging products, groups of products, solutions by need, by circumstance. I mentioned earlier that whole map with the various folks that work at the store, and their picks for that specific trail run, something like that. Winter must-haves in Rochester, New York, according to Jerry, our oldest employee, whatever it is, and you make a joke, and everybody gets to know everybody who works at the store while they happen to be perusing the site. You're also going through the act of curation when presenting your products. Palmetto Running Company does a really good job of this. And you can also have a button down at the bottom. because it's going to make your eye twitch when you're doing this, by the way, by constraining what you're showing in these areas as opposed to just showing categories. If you just show categories, it actually kind of makes it hard for the standard shopper that doesn't have a whole lot of run specialty knowledge to go through and figure out what the heck is going on. Fewer choices, highly curated, makes it a lot easier, and we tend to see higher purchase rates on a per visitor perspective when that happens. But like I said, your eye's going to be twitching when you're doing it. So just to keep that eye twitch a little bit lower and a little bit less intense, you can have a button down at the bottom of the screen that says, you want to sift through everything that we have in stock, click here and you can go through our warehouse. And it's literally click the button and they have access to absolutely everything in your e-com store, and they can search and filter to their heart's content. So you're not really keeping them from seeing everything, but you have these leading pathways of curation based on the same kinds of conversations that you have in store with people. So you're presenting the value of knowledge and experience and curation that you're presenting to somebody in store online, and you're also making it easy for them to make a buying decision when they visit you online as well. Definitely a huge deal. If you absolutely have to show categories on the front page and that's the way that you want to do your navigation, if you can keep it between 10 and 15 at a maximum, and have no more than 1 to 2 nested children for categories, then users tend to get less lost in that situation. But there is a notable and remarkable increase in sale per visitor when you go the curated, cared for path of need versus category when you develop things out that way.
Well said.
So I know we're bouncing up on oh my God, is Rob going to talk for the rest of the entire day? I want to throw myself off the building.
You're good. I think that was a perfect way to end it. I think that summed everything up.
Cool. Now we do have
Great.
one tiny little additional piece to throw in
Okay.
there. And this is just an asterisk. It is very important. We mentioned all this stuff, but I did want to point this out as important.
Okay.
And that is the Google Business Profile. So this is a free thing that you can do. You create the Google Business Profile. You have to prove that you own it. So my suggestion would be to create a Google account that belongs to the business. Don't try to use your personal one or it gets hairy quickly. Don't ask me how I know that. And then the key with the Google Business Profile, I call it kissing the ring, is make a change once every couple of weeks. So add a picture from a recent event. Look and see if they've added any new features, like they added tap to call a couple months back. I think they added a chat feature. There's like a direct link to add Google reviews. They make such a huge deal out of Google reviews. Google reviews are very useful, so the more customers you can get to leave Google reviews, the better off you are. Changing your hours of operation and making sure that those are updated. And during the holiday season, they have a place where you can list products. This is very unintuitive, but I promise you that this works really well. Instead of listing absolutely everything that you have there, list 2.
Oh, Rob,
I did
you
it.
zoomed in. You did it. I should have bet on it.
And I don't know how to zoom out. How do I zoom out?
You're going to pinch out. So put your fingers together and then pinch out.
Oh, I'm a genius. I
You're
can
getting dangerous
retire
now.
baby. Okay, so I knew I was going to do it. And now I've lost my train. Oh, so during the holiday season, do this. for products on your Google business profile. A couple of denominations of gift card that are popular. If you do a gift basket or something like that, one of those maybe. One or two like popular and or new products. You know, men's product, women's product, unisex product, kids product, something like that. Like, let's call it 5 things. Keep it super duper small. Most folks aren't going to be shopping by way of the Google business profile. It's really just a teaser. They're going to go to your website to get a taste of what you're about. But when you're staring down the barrel of that business profile and trying to figure out what to put there, they ask you to put products there, and it makes you want to freaking gouge your eyeballs out trying to figure out what it is. Trust me, go like 5 things, and or do branded stuff like your shop T-shirt, your shop hat, and gift card, something like that. You know, really encourage that brand equity. Anyway, also extending your reach. So, you know, making sure that as soon as you possibly can, take advantage of feeds out to aggregator services and product listing services. So,
Yes.
like Meta Commerce. So, you know, Instagram shopping, Facebook shopping, Google Merchant Marketplace, and Google Local Listings, locally from your point of sale system, all those things. Those will send every product that you've got out there and associate it with you. It may sound like I'm being hypocritical versus my entire previous soapbox statement, but I'm not. This is really just about making sure that there is a total picture of exposure out there in the world. And obviously, as much as you would love to be able to tell the world how great you are in your given area about your opinions about trail running, you know, Google local listings probably isn't the place to do that. So the next best thing is your products.
Would it be fair to say that essentially you just need to prove to the algorithm that you exist? That's essentially what we're doing. All of those
Yep.
things, tying it together, is what we're doing here.
That you exist, that you care, that you've put the effort in, and just check on that Google business profile every couple of weeks. Change a little bit here and there, and you will consistently be towards the top of those local listings when somebody searches for something local.
Rob always likes to compare it to your most, what's the word you use, Rob? Your most valuable piece of real estate. And I like that analogy because it really is. You're building equity in this. So if you look at these steps, they might seem, you know, the things that you need to do to get that, you know, to where it needs to be. It might seem, you know, overwhelming or like, wow, that's a lot. But like, these are just little steps that you take to just build that equity in that real estate, because essentially that's yours. You will digitally own that forever, and you will just continue, you know, to build on that. So these things that we're kind of going over, I like that analogy a lot. And as I say that out loud, Rob, I'm going to steal that because that's the best. It is. It's your real estate. You're building the equity and the value, and all of these little things, while they might seem heavy at first, they add to the value of the overall picture.
For sure, for sure. And I know we covered a lot, but we want to give you as much detail as we can. As always, we want to remove the mystery around the digital world, because whether we like it or not, the convergence of run specialty in the real world and run specialty in the digital world has happened and will stay. And we want to make it as cool and great for everybody as possible. We would love your feedback. So if you want us to dive more deeply into any of these subjects, if you want to challenge us on any of these subjects, if you want to be a guest and talk to us about your experience, if you want to, you know, slap us in the face on the show just for fun, you know, maybe I'm up for that. I know Derek is, but I might have to be convinced. No, I'm just kidding.
You could put me in one of those booths with the water and then just...
But just a hand, you know. I'm afraid to move my hand too much. I don't know what my camera's going to do. But anyway, we deeply appreciate everybody joining us today, and apologies for taking it on so long, but hopefully this was worth it for you. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you,
Yeah,
Derek.
as always, we're grateful for you.
We are. Cheers.